Welcome. For those who just walked in, my name is Erica, and I'm from the College Greenlight team. Thank you for joining us on day one of the Online College Block Party, a webinar series that celebrates first-gen and underrepresented students on their journey to and through college. So today we have 3 presentations on deck. Starting with Colgate, we'll get some advice on how to save money through the college application process. After that, we will introduce Smith College, who will help us learn more about the unique academic and social opportunities that exist at women's colleges. And then finally, we will wrap things up with University of California at Berkeley, and they will talk to us about institution types and how you distinguish one from the next to find your best fit academically, socially, and financially. So before we get started, here are some tips to get the most out of College Block Party. 1, use the chat feature to the right and chat with others in the room. Feel free to introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself and what you're looking for. Have a question? Use the Ask a Question tool below. Note, there are no right or wrong questions, but try to avoid questions asking about your specific GPA, test scores, or admission chances. Colleges can't provide you with the best answer without seeing your full application. So try to ask questions that can be answered on a broad term or that can apply for everyone who's in attendance. Also, if you're curious about your admission chances on that note, visit College Greenlight and explore the 3,000 college profiles that we have on our site, and check out the What Are My Chances calculator that can help you understand what your admission chances are. And if you're joining us live, be sure to join the conversation on Twitter using hashtag CollegeBlockParty20. Now that we're ready to go, let's kick things off. Please welcome Colgate's Associate Dean of Admissions and the Coordinator of Outreach for Opportunity and Inclusion, Jameer Abney.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this evening, this afternoon. I'm going to be chatting with you a little bit about the financial aid process, as Erica said, and how to save money on your college journey. And just want to tell you a little bit more about me. My name is Jameer Abney. I'm Associate Dean of Admission here at Colgate University. Also, I'm a first-generation grad, so representing and being proud of that first-generation background. Here you'll see on the map my travel regions. I recruit in Texas, Oklahoma, Illinois, and Wisconsin for Colgate. But I'm originally from the state of North Carolina. Lived for a long time in the Pacific Northwest in the states of Washington and Oregon, and actually went to a small private school out in Salem, Oregon, the capital there, Willamette University. And then I've spent some time now for the last about 5 years in the Northeast. First, as a graduate student at Harvard's Graduate School of Education in the Boston area in Cambridge, and now living in upstate New York in my work here at Colgate. So I've had the privilege to live all over, travel all over, and now have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the work that I do, particularly working with students from diverse backgrounds, leading our multicultural recruitment efforts, and thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion within the admissions platform, as well as working with my colleagues from across campus to think about retention and student success for students coming from a variety of different demographics, social, gender equity, identity backgrounds once they get to our campus. But first, getting into college and thinking about how do you save money through that process. So what we'll cover today is how do you apply for financial aid, talking a little bit about cost of attendance, different aid options and types of financial aid, also some helpful resources to help you find financial aid, and then also any special circumstances that you might consider as you go through your aid process. But first, when we think about applying for financial aid, obviously, everyone's familiar with the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. This is the federal government's form to help you apply for federal aid. So things like your Pell Grant, your student loans that you hear a lot about, and other types of forms of aid that you can receive directly through the federal government. And this is just available for U.S. citizens and permanent residents. You also might have heard about the CSS profile. And this isn't a form that every college utilizes, but it's an additional financial aid document that asks for a little bit more information that a lot of institutions will utilize as part of their financial aid process. This is something that Colgate uses to give us a bit more information because we are one of the schools that meets 100% of demonstrated need. We're going to ask you for a little bit more info to figure out what your need is. So some institutions are utilizing this, and in particular for international applicants and non-US citizens, this is a form that we can utilize in order to be able to still meet that full need. And you also are going to have institutions that have state requirements or other additional forms, their own forms that they might utilize. One example for us is the New York State TAP application is an additional form for New York State residents. So different financial aid forms, but the FAFSA is the one that's going to be most common. Then the CSS profile that you'll see, and then other forms that colleges might ask you to fill out as well. The FAFSA in particular is going to look at just general information, background information, your dependency status. So who are you living with? Who's your primary guardian? Two-parent household, single-parent household. Your income and tax information, both for yourself as well as for your parent. College information, if there are other individuals in your household that are currently in college. And then just a bunch of different general financial information. And then after you file for the FAFSA, as well as the CSS profile, you're going to get something called your estimated family contribution, or your EFC. So this is a pretty common thing that you'll hear about. It's calculated taking into account a variety of different information, including the size of your family, number of children that are currently in college, parent and student income, any additional assets or things that make up your family's income or financial circumstances, typical living expenses, including your taxes, housing, food, clothing, etc., and then your parents' current needing for saving for retirement and other costs of education for yourself, as well as other children that might be in the household. So a range of different financial information to make up what is that family contribution, how much can your family actually pay towards your college education. So when you think about your EFC, it's really a measure of your family's financial strength. And so taking into account all that other information that was listed before to get a good sense of, again, what can your family afford to put towards your tuition and fees and paying for your college costs. And again, taking into account family size, income and assets, number of people in the family. And the College Board that utilizes that helps you with the FAFSA as well as other financial aid has a great resource called your EFC calculator, where you can give general pieces of this information and get a broad sense of what your EFC might be. This isn't going to be a direct correlation because you're not going to give them all of the information that you'll give on the FAFSA and to the federal government, but this does give you a general sense of where your EFC might fall and help you begin to think about your financial circumstances and your family's planning towards your college education. So once you've gone through all this process, you have your EFC, you filled out the different forms, then different types of financial aid are important for you. So the first thing that's always on people's mind is gift aid, or aid that you don't have to pay back. And this is usually in the form of grants and scholarships. So when you think about the difference between grants and scholarships, first grants are typically going to be just based off of your financial need. So this is looking primarily at that demonstrated need, at that financial need, and giving you funds that go towards meeting that need, funds that you don't have to pay back. And typically these aren't going to be based off of a GPA or other academic requirements. It is solely just looking at your financial circumstances. Whereas a scholarship, on the other hand, is going to be looking at merit or need-based academic things or extracurricular opportunities. So these are earned funds. So these are opportunities for rewarding you for how well you've done in and outside of the classroom. So you might see things like a scholarship for a particular GPA or a particular accomplishment winning an award, or even things like athletic scholarships that you'll see student athletes from the NCAA receive. And these can be national scholarships, local, institution specific, based off an organization that you're a part of, different type of ways that you're going to be able to earn money to go towards your family contribution, towards your total cost, tuition and fees, and help knock off some of those expenses. Then you're also going to have something called self-help aid. And this is where you're going to see work study that may be included in your financial aid package. And if work study is listed there, this is giving you that opportunity to earn that money, but you do have to actually earn it. And so work study is going to go towards if you have a job on campus working part-time or some type of an internship or fellowship on campus that allows you to get paid, and those funds can go towards your education as well. So even if you have work study built into your financial aid award, you still have to go out and earn that money. So that's why it's called self-help aid. And then finally, of course, everybody's familiar with borrowed money or student loans. And so these are funds that have to be repaid. And so you as the student can take out loans, as well as parents can take out loans to add to your overall lump sum of money that can go towards paying your tuition and fees to pay for your education. So these are the three primary core areas where you're going to have that funding to make up your financial aid award. And you'll see all of these differently packaged for different colleges and universities, but these are the three buckets that you typically are going to want to think of when you think about your financial aid. So when you think about financial aid and what it is, it's funds provided to students and families to help you pay for your college costs. And when you think about your cost of attendance, this is your total cost to pay for your 1 year, so your tuition, room and board, that's your housing and your food plan, books and supplies, travel, personal expenses, etc. And you hear often colleges talk about the sticker price. And this is the big number that you see for the cost of tuition and fees for that 1 year. And for many colleges, you're going to see this is upwards of $60,000 to $70,000 for that 1 year of college, especially for institutions like Colgate that are private institutions. And those are your direct charges taken into account, your tuition, your room and board, your other fees like your student health insurance, and the indirect costs that will be estimated, your travel costs, your books and other supplies that you'll need, because you do have to pay for books as a college student. So this is how you want to really break down that total cost of attendance, which will be different depending upon type of school, in-state versus out-of-state, public versus private. So these are going to be calculated in a variety of different ways, but your cost of attendance is just that total cost. Estimating your financial aid eligibility. So the net price calculator is one that all colleges are going to have available for you on their website for you to be able to utilize. It's a requirement by the federal government. But also many colleges have other calculators. For instance, Colgate utilizes the My Intuition calculator. And this is one that is a little bit more comprehensive than the net price. It's going to ask you 6 particular questions that get a good sense of your family financial situation, your family contribution, and then give you a range of where your financial aid might be. So you have different calculators that you can utilize to get a good estimate of what your financial aid might look like, and allow you to start to ask some questions of a college or university to get a good sense of where you might fall within that demonstrated need, where you might fall in terms of the financial aid that they can offer to you, and start to get a good picture with you and your family of how you're going to be able to go about paying for your college education. Then in thinking about calculating your overall financial aid eligibility, once you have a sense of cost of attendance, maybe you've estimated your EFC, your expected family contribution, then you have your financial need. And as I mentioned earlier, Colgate as a school that meets 100% of demonstrated need, that final number, that financial need that's left over after you take out what your family can contribute, we're making a commitment to be able to meet 100% of that. That's very different depending upon the college and university that you might be looking at and how they're going to go about meeting that financial need as well. Some colleges are going to have all need-based and utilize just grants to meet that. Some are going to take into account merit and other types of scholarships to make up that alongside other types of grants and need-based financial aid. So you're going to have a mix and different approaches to be able to meet that need for you. And some institutions are not going to be within that bucket of schools that meets 100% of demonstrated need. And so there are going to be some other costs associated there for you to be able to make up that gap that might come in what the institution is able to offer you, but other funds that you're going to need to be able to pay for the rest of what's left over to meet the financial need that you have there. Obviously, then the question is, well, how do I find other funds so you don't have those loans, or don't have to worry about that additional gap? And so you can utilize a variety of different options to be able to find other scholarships to meet the need that you have. So first, whoever your college counselor or school counselor may be, resources to help point you in the right direction. You can seek out local businesses and other organizations that can tell you about funds that they may have to be able to help you meet those needs. Taking advantage of community-based organizations, national organizations, or local organizations that can help you as you build your college lists and be able to work out other ways to find funds to meet that need. And then also online tools. College Board has a great scholarship search tool. There's the Big Future article here that gives you a sense of how to find college scholarships. And of course, our friends here at College Greenlight have national, local, as well as graduate, once you're looking at maybe master's or PhD programs, other ways to be able to find funds to help you cover those costs. So all kinds of different resources available to you, both right at home and online, to be able to help you fulfill meeting those additional funds that you need in order to pay for your college education. And then there's always special circumstances that you want to take into account. And with any family, everything's going to be a little bit different. There'll be different questions that you have to ask. And this is where the Office of Financial Aid is going to be really useful, because those professionals are there designed to look at all these different circumstances for you and for your family. So things like unusual medical expenses, the death of a parent or a spouse, loss of employment during the process, extraordinary care for a dependent, or maybe an older relative in the family, a divorce that causes some changes in the financial circumstances. So anytime anything unique happens, that's where you want to pick up the phone or send an email and reach out directly to the professionals in the Office of Financial Aid at a school that you're interested in, and tell them about that particular circumstance, and they may be able to work something out to update or change or add to your financial aid award. So just because you get that first financial aid letter, and maybe something is a little bit off and you have questions, or if circumstances change as you're working towards going and enrolling to a college, always reach out and tell them about these unique circumstances so they can help you work through that process, because you never know, you can find yourself in a situation where things looked one way at the beginning and now they've changed. In particular, as you look at circumstances right now with the COVID-19 situation, colleges and universities recognize that things are going to be different for lots of families as we move through this circumstance, and they're going to be able to try to meet that need or adjust with you in order to meet those particular circumstances. But if you don't tell the college or university, they can't really help you. So always be willing to pick up the phone, shoot the office an email, have that conversation so that those professionals can be useful for you in figuring out how to best meet your particular needs if they've changed over the course of time. And then, of course, helpful online resources. The U.S. Department of Education has some great resource sites available for you to learn more about the financial aid process, to give you more nuance in understanding some of the particular challenges, the different forms, and what they're going to be asking you about. If you have a state organization, here I have the New York State Higher Education Service Corps, you might have a state organization that might be able to answer some of your questions. Obviously, the College Board is very much involved in the college process at all different facets, so they have some good resources for you. This Financial Aid 101 resource is really great just to help you get and navigate the basics. If you're not as familiar with the CSS profiles, because most people are most familiar with the FAFSA, they have a good resource to talk about that. And then, of course, understanding the Federal Student Aid ID and the Federal Student Aid process is going to be really useful for you as you're filling out all these different forms, and they're asking you a lot of really comprehensive information. So definitely check out these online tools to help you get a baseline for you to start with, and then you can bring your more nuanced questions to the particular aid offices of the schools that you're interested in. And, of course, additional ways that you can save costs. Explore colleges like Colgate that meet 100% of demonstrated need, and schools that are making a full commitment to meet whatever your financial need may be. And College Greenlight has a great list of these colleges and universities as you're building your college list to be able to think about financial aid and costs, and knowing that you have some schools on your list that are full need meeting will take a little bit of the pressure off of you. And then obviously, as you're applying to colleges, there is the application fee. And so for Colgate, we have a $60 application fee, but there are fee waivers available for you. If you're a student who's a part of a CBO, or you're a student that has free or reduced lunch, or you're a student who got a particular waiver to take the SAT or the ACT or those types of things, those automatically will qualify you for an application fee waiver. But there are other circumstances where you can get that fee waived. But again, it's reaching out to that college or university, it's having that conversation and being willing to engage and ask those questions so that the university professionals can help you. But again, if you don't open the door to that conversation, you don't reach out to us and let us know, we won't know what your financial circumstances are to be able to give you a fee waiver like that. Then, of course, there's also the enrollment deposit. Once you get all the way through the process, you're at the end where we are now. With May 1st coming up, students are making their decisions. Most colleges and universities have some kind of an enrollment deposit to lock in your spot within the incoming class. For Colgate, that's a $500 fee for you to lock up your spot, to say that you're enrolling, to make that commitment. But again, these can be reduced, and for some colleges and universities, it can be completely waived. And if you're a student who's already qualified for other types of fee waivers, this is where you can come back and say, hey, I already qualified for this fee waiver for the application or for a test, or have these other these types of financial circumstances. Can you also bring down this huge deposit amount because I really want to enroll at your school? And in many cases, that's something that a university will be able to do for you. Again, it's just reaching out to ask, maybe some type of form or something that you have to fill out online. But again, it's just making that outreach, letting a university know, and then we can be helpful and flexible and really adjust to what your personal circumstances may be. And for us, we've been able to, in this year, reduce all the way down to $100 to under $100, and in a couple of cases, even actually waive that full fee. So it really does depend on the circumstances and the context of what you're bringing to a university administrator. But again, just being willing to reach out to ask those questions can help us be a useful resource for you. Also, when you're looking at colleges and universities, you're going to have to take into account things like fees for applying for financial aid. Actually, the CSS profile has a fee attached to it. You have your score reports. You get your first score submissions are free when you take the test, but then after that, if you're wanting to apply to more than 4 schools, fees to be able to send out your scores to other places for that actual official score report. But for a lot of colleges and institutions, you have the opportunity to be able to give self-reported scores. So it takes that away, and you only have to send that official score once you decide you're going to enroll. So those are good questions to ask. Do you take self-reported scores as a part of the application process? Also, something to consider is thinking about applying early to colleges and universities. Because if you're looking at a school and you know you're really, really interested, if you're applying early decision, you get the benefit of early notification. It shows that you're really, really interested in the school. And a lot of colleges and universities now are being more aggressive in their early pool, admitting more students earlier, because these are students who have shown a strong interest, but are also much more likely predictively to actually enroll. And for a school like Colgate, our admission deadlines are the same deadlines for our financial aid. So we're actually going to send you your letter of admission and your financial aid letter all in one. And it gives you that information sooner to know what your financial circumstances may be. And you might be thinking in your head, well, if I apply early decision, that's me making a commitment that I'm going to enroll. And then the financial aid is not right, then I don't want to be stuck with that. Well, in a lot of cases, the financial circumstances is one reason why a school might let you out of that commitment. It's a place where if you're coming back and saying, hey, this is just not something that me and my family can afford, we're not going to hold you to that. We're not going to make you keep that early decision agreement. That is a circumstance where if we're not able to work with you and change the financial letter for you or change that financial aid award, that we would let you out of that commitment and allow you to seek out other options and apply to other schools. So yes, an early decision application is an early commitment in most circumstances, but financial circumstances, the financial aid award not being quite enough is a situation where a college or university would let you out of that early decision agreement. So these are the 3 deadlines for Colgate. You'll see ED1, ED2, and our regular decision deadline. Our early decision 2 option does allow for students who apply regular decision to actually have until March 1st to convert to early decision 2. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are a school that's going to send you your financial aid award alongside your letter of admission. So these deadlines are the exact same for your FAFSA, for your CSS profile, and any other financial aid documents that will ask for you, so we can give you all of the information up front so you can make an informed decision and not be waiting on us to decide, is this going to be a good fit for me financially? You're going to have all that information available to you. These are our financial aid codes for the profile as well as for the FAFSA. You also have our information for our Office of Financial Aid. Their web pages on our website gives you a lot of great information to learn more about our financial aid process, some of the questions that we're going to ask, and a little bit more context to take into account. One of the really unique things that we did this past year is our board actually signed off on a brand new policy called our No Loan Initiative, that for all families where the income is $125,000 or less, we're actually going to package you without any student loans at all. And that's a brand new thing that we started with this year's incoming class and will continue for the rest of the future. So for students who come from families with $125,000 or less in income, you're going to be packaged without any student loans. You're just going to have a larger need-based grant because all of our financial aid is need-based financial aid, but trying to take the burden off of families who are worried about that additional financial contribution, that future loan debt that they're going to have to worry about. Brand new thing that we did this year to be able to add to not only meeting 100% of demonstrated need, but doing it without any student loans for families from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. A little bit more information about Colgate here. We'll see a little bit about our students. We have just under 3,000 students here. 22% of our students are students of color, 9% first generation, 15% international and dual citizens. Academic information here, a 9-to-1 student to faculty ratio. Average class size is under 20. We have over 50 majors and minors, over 300 full-time faculty. 23% of our faculty are people of color as well. I mentioned earlier, we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. Over 40% of our class of 2023, so last year's incoming class, received financial aid, and the average aid award was over $50,000. So really significant contributions to meet need for students on average. But as I said, we meet 100% of demonstrated need and giving nearly half of our class some form of institutional financial aid as a part of the overall package. A bit more about Colgate as you think about just diversity and inclusion specifically, which is an area that I'm very much involved in. This last year, in addition to the No Loan Initiative, we took a really critical look at the institution as a whole and created what we call the third century plan as Colgate is going into its third century of existence. And as a part of that third century plan, one of the critical areas we're really looking at is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a full plan for DEI that lays out a framework for Colgate and thinking about diversity and inclusion more intentionally, more holistically, bringing in student input, bringing in outside individuals to really evaluate our diversity and inclusion processes, and thinking about how we do a better job, not only in terms of recruitment, but also how we best make sure our students from diverse backgrounds are successful once they get to campus as well. Some of the student resources that you'll see that are promoting that effort is our Alana Cultural Center, which is in the course right now of hiring a brand new director, our LGBTQ plus community and resource center on campus, Great Religious Life, and we have 10 university chaplains of a variety of different faiths on campus, and a variety of other resources, including resources for first-gen students, resources specifically for women, and resources and clubs and organizations for a variety of different student identities, backgrounds, demographics, to really try to make sure you can find your place, you can find your home, you can find your community, and get the most out of your experience during your 4 years on campus. We also have an Office of Equity and Diversity that works very closely with different offices, faculty across campus to train faculty and staff to think about cultural competency, to offer events and opportunities to bring the community together to think about diversity and inclusion more holistically, engage with the student community, hear about student concerns, and think about how we can best address the things that students are bringing to the University of Leadership. And actually right now, one of the things that Colgate is thinking about bringing in is a chief diversity officer to at the most senior level take up some of these concerns, take up some of these projects, and be a part of the influential work that's being done to think about diversity and inclusion across the campus and across the university from a variety of different angles, from what I do in recruitment and thinking about student support and student life and student resources, faculty and staff development, student development. So really coming at this from all different angles, with the plan being at the highest level of it, and then down to different offices and university resources to make sure that students are able to be successful during their time on campus. So a particular program that we offer in this particular area, our annual diversity open house, Colgate in Focus, which I have the opportunity to help lead and plan the logistics for. Last year's event was October 6th through 8th. And this is a program that really brings about 60 to 70 students to campus, full travel assistance available to students to spend 3 days, 2 nights on campus, hosted by a current student, and get the opportunity to see up close what the university looks like. And this is really designed for students who would typically not have the opportunity to be able to visit campus, to come to spend this time, to experience it for themselves, and really get a good feel for how they would be able to become a part of this community, and can they see themselves as a fit by engaging with the current campus community for themselves. This year, as we think about the current circumstances, we are talking about offering a virtual version of this event and having opportunities to do a virtual class, a virtual tour, different panels with current students, opportunities to engage with one another, as well as bringing in a virtual feature speaker for students to be able to engage with. So lots of different ways that we're going to still try to host this event, even if we can't have it physically on campus, to allow students to get some semblance of what our community is like and what the valuable resources are for students who come from a variety of different backgrounds. And these links will be provided to you as well, so you can learn a little bit more about last year's program and what the focus of this event are. It is an application-based event, so students do have to apply, submit an essay, their transcript, self-reported test scores, and then we select a group of students out of that full applicant base. As I mentioned, the last 2 years, we've had upwards of 60 to 70 students. If it does end up being a virtual event, we'll probably expand it to have much more availability for students to be able to take advantage of. And one of the great things is about it being a 3-day event is that students have the opportunity not only to go through structured functions and structured events that we've put together, but also just time to hang out, time to get to see the university, time to walk around the town, and time just to experience for themselves whether they could see themselves living amongst our community as well. And one of the things that we've talked about is if we do offer a virtual version of this, is that we'll still give you a current student host, so you have someone to engage with, to text with, to email back and forth with, and get a direct student perspective of what it's like to be a Colgate student. So that's all I have for the planned portion of this. Now we want to open it up to questions, to be able to answer any specific questions that you have about the financial aid process, as well as questions about Colgate. So I'll turn it back over to Erica, and she's going to ask questions, and I'll try to do my best to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Jameer. I hope everyone found all that very informative. I know I did, but now for questions and answers. So making sure that we get these top voters in from Catherine, can you provide some reliable places for students to find maybe scholarships? And when should they start? Maybe if they're a sophomore or junior, and what should they consider when applying for these scholarships?
So obviously I mentioned College Greenlight is a great resource for you to take advantage of. Your school officials and school resources are going to be really useful. FastWeb is an online website that can be very beneficial. The College Board website is useful. And then any businesses or organizations around you. Typically your junior year is a great time to start to really do your homework, to visit colleges if you have the opportunity, to go and see admission officials if they're visiting your campus, or to go to college fairs in your area, just to give yourself a jump start on that process, and just to give you the opportunity to get to know a little bit more about universities. If there are virtual events that are happening, whether it's a webinar or a virtual class, or if they have a virtual tour, those are great resources to start to do your homework around. So definitely don't wait till your senior year to start to begin to explore, because you really want to give yourself a chance to build out that list of different colleges that are your top schools, your top 10 or 15 or so. So in your junior year, you want to start to do that homework and really start to ask questions looking at financial aid, as well as finding those colleges and universities that are a good fit for what you're looking for in terms of academic interests, extracurricular interests, as well as just the type of community that you see yourself being a part of.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Next question, inspired by Lexi's question, I imagine there's many students who are worried about scholarships, and we're really banking on, their academic profile to get them into the colleges of their choice. So what's some advice you would give to those students to have colleges notice them and get a leg up in the admissions process?
Well, first, go to their events, especially universities that track demonstrated interest. If you're interested in colleges where interest is important, do as much as you can to be involved, whether it's being on their website, going to their events, make sure you're opening their emails, email your regional admission officer. Like, those are good things that you can do. Another way to stand out, honestly, for schools that aren't just tracking interest, is just be yourself. Be open, be willing to be vulnerable, share the things that you're passionate about in your essays, in those opportunities for additional information on the application, as well as when you have an opportunity to meet an admission officer, go say hello, shake their hand, make an impression, be someone that they remember, be someone that you're having that email conversation with. Those are really valuable opportunities. If they have a fly-in program, apply to that just like you're going to apply to the college, because they'll see that you've shown that indicated interest and see that you've been engaged with the university in different ways. Even if they're not tracking that, that's going to show up in your student portal. Another thing that you might do, if they're alumni in the area, do an alumni interview and make an impression with an alum, or reach out to current students if they have students on their website for you to engage with. Any way that you can engage, have conversation, those are things that are being tracked, even if it's not a part of demonstrated interest, because we want to know who the students are that are going to actually enroll. And ultimately, we're basing a lot of what we're doing off of building a class and who's going to actually come. So if you're showing that propensity to engage, you're showing that willingness and want to be involved. And then, of course, just being your star self, being a good student, getting good grades, taking the rigorous courses, filling out a great academic profile. Leadership opportunities are really valuable, or other ways that you're involved in your community. And even if you're not able to build out that resume and that profile in traditional ways, if you have responsibilities at home or financial responsibilities or other things that you have to do as a part of your family or community dynamic, talk about those things. Like, obviously, you don't want to come off, or you don't want to create a situation where someone is pitying you, or you have to feel like you have to really bring yourself down to a particular level. But if you have those responsibilities and that takes away from your time to do other things that other students might be doing, especially for someone like me who's looking at diversity and inclusion and thinking about how we cast a wider net out to students to allow them to think about us as an option, telling us about those things gives us the opportunity to be that advocate for you in the process, and to be able to say, hey, this is a star student. They just didn't have access to certain things because of XYZ. So as much as you're willing to and open to communicate and open to be vulnerable in those ways, you can really build an advocate in your admission officer to help you through the process and help you best paint a picture of who you are, what you care about, and what your circumstances are to help you in the process.
Wonderful answer. Thank you so much. The next question that we have is from Gina. How do students get merit-based scholarships? And is there a separate process for those students to apply for them?
So yes and no, it depends on the college. So at some universities, they're just going to look at you based off of your GPA and your test score, and they're going to consider you for merit based off of just their own internal model. For other colleges and universities, there might be an additional application for a scholar program or some type of specific scholarship that you have to do something extra for, an extra essay, extra recommendations, etc. Obviously, if it's extracurricular related, then you have to be a star in that particular extracurricular area. If it's athletics, music, theater, or performance in some other way, then you have to going to have to add to your application maybe a slide room, portal, or some other way to showcase your skill. So it really depends with merit how a college may look at it. A lot of schools are just going to consider every student who applies based off of their own internal model, or there may be additional steps that you have to take if it's extracurricular related, or it's a scholarship or a particular scholar program where you might have to do something different. So it really is going to depend upon the colleges and universities that you're looking at, if there is something different that you're going to have to do for a university or college-based merit award. Now, if it's something for an outside organization or some type of community or national organization, and of course they're going to have their own process, and you can just go through their steps directly with them, and that'll be separate from the college or university that you're applying to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A lot of good information there. The next question that we have here is from Giannis. Is being a low-income student considered a barrier? For context, the student added, low-income students are more likely to look for aid. So they're wondering if colleges see those students as a burden.
No, we're looking for students from all different walks of life in our process, and looking to be able to bring those students into the conversation, because it adds to our community to have those different perspectives available. And if you're a top student and you're a good performer and you've done well and you've achieved, you're going to stand out regardless of what your financial circumstances may be. Where it can become maybe a challenge for you or a hurdle is if you're applying to colleges, especially regular decision, and it just gets late in the process and maybe you're on the cusp of their academic profile and they have other students who have stronger academic backgrounds than what you might be showcasing, and they're at the limits of what their budget can afford in terms of financial aid, that can be a challenge. But if you're thinking just from a merit perspective, if you're a great student, you're a great student. And great colleges are going to want you there, and they're going to support you financially because they want you to add to their community, and they recognize the great perspective and the great skills that you can bring no matter what your income may be. Where it can, I think, become the biggest hurdle for you, if you want to consider that at all, is if you're a middle of the range student in terms of their academic profile, and there are other students from a similar background with a better academic profile, and it's you or them, and then that can become a situation of just you competing against a really great pool. But in general, if you're a great student, you fit the profile, you've shown the ability, your financial circumstances aren't going to hold you back at all.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Our next question is from Anthony. For undocumented students, how does the college application process look for them?
So the application process is the same as anyone else. You're going to submit transcripts, test scores, application, essays, recommendations, etc. The financial aid process, on the other hand, is going to look more so like an international student. Because you can't apply for the FAFSA, so you may just be utilizing the CSS profile or some type of internal financial aid forms to be able to make up your financial aid process. And in that case, it's going to be different depending upon the institution. So for a school like Colgate, where we have a commitment to meet 100% of demonstrated need, we're doing that for all of our admitted students, international, domestic, undocumented, DACA, etc. If we're admitting you, we're saying we're going to commit to meeting your financial need. So if you enroll and you're an undocumented student with a high need, then that means we're going to provide a significant amount of grant aid to be able to make sure this is feasible for you. You're just only going to be filling out the CSS profile because you can't fill out the FAFSA. So it just really depends on the school, how that process will look. And it depends on how they're going to offer you aid based on their own internal model, where it's merit-based aid, which is just looking at your academic profile, or need-based grant aid based off of the financial information that you're able to share. But that's going to all be different based upon the institution. But for a school like us, who's meeting 100% of need, we're doing that for international as well as domestic students.
Noted. Thank you so much. Question for you. What is one thing you know now about the admissions process that you wish you knew when you were in high school?
I wish I had a better sense of what holistic review really means. I think for a lot of students, when you think about especially colleges that are viewed as top colleges or have the prestige factor, you think, oh, if I don't have a perfect GPA and perfect test scores, they'll never look at me. And really, as you think about building out your list, you may limit yourself in terms of going after particular schools, or thinking about how you show up on paper in a variety of different ways, and how all of your skills and abilities and talents can really push you into be competitive at different colleges and universities. I also wish I had known more about the financial aid process from the standpoint of not letting the sticker price scare you away from particular schools, because of course private universities are going to look more in terms of tuition and fees, but a lot of these colleges and universities have more funding to be able to give to make these affordable options, even compared to an in-state local institution. Also, not feeling like you have to just stay in state again in order to be able to pay for college, but be open to even out-of-state public institutions and what they can provide to you, and feeling like you have to know exactly what you want to do in order to go to particular colleges and universities. And I know a lot of people think about liberal arts colleges like a place like Colgate, where we don't have a business major, we don't have a major in engineering. It's like, well, if I want this career, I can't go to this type of school. Whereas liberal arts and sciences universities are great places because they're smaller, you have better access to faculty, you have access to research, and you can really build this full profile that, especially for careers like engineering, where you need a master's degree or PhD to be a professional in that field anyway, you can build a resume as an undergraduate student that's going to make you that much more competitive for those graduate or additional education programs as you move through the process.
Yes, thank you. And so a question that I'm seeing in a lot of different ways is, just to give students a peace of mind, how do you know what scholarship is a scam and what scholarship is real?
Well, obviously, if it's asking you to pay up front, then that's probably some kind of a scam. You don't have to pay in order to get money to go to college. So if it's asking you for money up front, then you should know right away that that's not a good one for you. If it's from a company or organization that you're not as familiar with, checking out their website, seeing if that's real, asking college professionals about it can be really useful, really helpful. If you're finding it on a site like the College Board, College Greenlight, or directly from a university, you can usually feel pretty good about those opportunities, but always utilize the professionals around you, reach out to admission officers. One of the things that we're here for is to answer questions. So admission officers, offices of financial aid, directly with the College Board, a place like College Greenlight, if you're just uncertain, ask first before you press submit, before you give your information, especially if it's asking you for anything like your social security number, it's asking you for contact information, things that can lead to fraud. Be very, very careful about those things, because once your information is out there in the internet, in the World Wide Web, you never know what can happen.
Yes. Another question that students are asking is, since a lot of schools are becoming test optional during this time, what are you all looking to focus more on? Is this going to make it more competitive or less competitive application process?
So neither. More or less competitive. I think schools that are selective are still going to be very selective. The schools that are less selective are going to be within the same range. Actually, before I worked at Colgate, I worked at an institution that was testing optional, and made that decision because we felt like it was a more equitable approach to the college admissions process. In general, as you look at research that's been done over and over and conducted and revalidated, test scores don't necessarily indicate a student's ability to be successful within a college education environment. And that's been shown. More so of what the test scores really show a correlation to with socioeconomic background, resource, and privilege in a lot of ways. And so really, I think this opens the avenue for more conversations, for more schools to think about testing optional in the future. What a lot of colleges will focus more on is academic ability and performance in the classroom, rigor of the curriculum, how have you challenged yourself within the context of what's available to you. And really that personal dynamic is going to become more important in how you portray yourself on paper. How do you talk about your passions, your interests? How do you talk about your skills and abilities, things that you've been involved with, leadership opportunities, work experience, internship experience, research, fellowships, artistic ability, etc. Like, how can you best fill out those qualities and characteristics to showcase how you're going to be able to add to a community when we're not able to just look at a particular score range and say, okay, this is a student who has shown this particular ability. But it forces colleges and universities to think also more critically about their evaluation process, the types of questions that they're going to ask you, what type of information they want to see, and what they're going to pay attention to. It gives us an opportunity to, I think, when you think about holistic admissions especially, to be more cognizant of what that means and what we're looking for by taking one factor away that already has been proven with some validity that isn't as important as it's made to seem, and help us look at all the different characteristics that exist there and think about the ways that we can be more equitable and mindful in our process of what it means for a student to show capability and talent in a holistic sense.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Jameer, for your time answering these questions. Are there any final thoughts that you can share with the group to keep the spirits high and keep our students motivated during this really uncertain time?
Ultimately, this is kind of a cliche thing to say, but the sky is really the limit. I think for me, growing up in a small town in North Carolina, being the child of a single parent, first generation background, low income background, to have done and achieved and had the opportunities and experiences that I've had thus far, I would have never guessed. And so don't put limits on yourself. Be willing to challenge yourself. Be willing to take chances. Apply to that school that you don't think that you could get into. Apply for that fellowship or that scholarship opportunity that you feel might be a little bit above you. And always be willing to take that risk and put yourself out there because you never know what's going to happen. And also lean on your community. Take advantage of what's around you. Use the resources that are there and believe in yourself. Because ultimately, if you don't believe in you, then nobody else is going to. You have to be the first person to step up, look in the mirror, and say, hey, I can do this. And if you continue to challenge yourself, you continue to be ambitious, and you continue to think about what you're capable of at a really, really high peak level, and that's just going to allow people to fall in line behind you. And then those people who don't, use that as motivation to continue to push forward. To now have, I'll be 30 this year in July, and to already have achieved my master's degree, looking at opportunities to get a PhD, or have traveled all over the world doing this particular job. And I've had the opportunity to reach back to my communities that I come from and to work with so many students from a variety of different backgrounds and be a mentor, be a role model, be an advocate. Those things are powerful. And utilize your privilege and the opportunities that you achieve as a way to be able to give back and to be able to be an example. And don't set any low expectations for yourself, because people are just going to look at you and believe in what they can do if you continue to set that high standard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights.
No
Everybody who has joined us today, I hope you were taking notes and following along, but fret not if you were not. We are recording this, and we will send the recording and the slides after the session. So thank you all so much for your time. But we are not done here. We still have a lot of great presentations coming up. So Jameer, thank you again for your time and your expertise. We really appreciate it. And thank you, audience, for your engagement and your questions.